Hello, my name is Austin Lozano.
And I'm Jessa Reeb, and I will be talking about Andy Warhol. Andrew Warhol, an artist, was born on September 28, 1930.
What kind of name is Andrew Warhol? I've never.
He started as a design artist doing commercial advertisements.
Oh, that makes sense because a lot of his artworks look kind of like they are advertisements or something you would see in a newspaper or a magazine.
Exactly. Usually, when we think of Andy Warhol, we think of his famous soup cans or the Marilyn. However, I will be discussing an artwork that is darker and more serious. This artwork, The Skull, by Andy Warhol, was made in 1976. This piece of work explores the questions of death and what happens to us after we die. Andy Warhol was very interested in death, and many of his art pieces explore the unknown and help him deal with the concept of death and dying. One of his famous quotes says, "I'm not afraid to die, I just don't want to be there when it happens."
That's really interesting, that quote. What do you think it means
I think it means that he just doesn't want to be there.
when he dies?
Exactly. Precisely.
Okay.
I think this quote shows his interest in death and also shows his humor side as to dealing with his concept.
Many of Andy Warhol's pieces of art look similar to each other. Why is that?
Ever since the Marilyn series, Warhol has nearly always used photographic silkscreens. Photographic silkscreens produce an even stronger assembly line effect. That is what gives them that manufactured look.
Oh, I see. So that's why they all kind of look alike because it looks like they're made in a factory.
Ah, yes, and that is the name Andy Warhol used for his art studio.
Interesting. The colors are also very interesting in this painting, don't you think? The stark contrast between the black and white and then those bright red and purple.
Ah, yes, indeed. When we really observe this painting and look at the colors and the meaning behind it, we see the idea of life ending, but also a new beginning. Another one of his famous quotes says, "Everything has its beauty, but not everyone chooses to see it." And this really shows his idea on death and dying.
Okay, so he's saying that death, which people usually view as a negative thing, can actually have a positive effect and is beautiful in its own way.
Exactly. Many people are afraid of dying, but Andy Warhol gives us idea that death can be beautiful in a way, and this is what he shows us through this painting.
The artist that I'm going to be talking about is the UK graffiti artist Banksy. He is anonymous, nobody knows who he is, and all of his art is done as graffiti. So it is done on walls, um, in the streets, everywhere. And the point of doing this is so that everybody can see art, and you don't have to pay to go to a museum. It's just free for everybody, like it should be.
That's fascinating.
Yes, it is. Banksy does a lot of controversial pieces of art. Many of his graffiti artworks have meaning behind them and they send a message to the public. The artwork that I'm going to be talking about is Rage of the Flower Thrower.
Ooh.
Here in Rage the Flower Thrower, you see a man who is throwing a bouquet of flowers. He looks very angry and militant like. He looks like a typical person you would see on the news if there were riots going on in the cities.
All right, I have a question.
Yes.
What type of materials did he use to make this masterpiece?
Well, being that Banksy is a graffiti artist, he creates stencils that he cuts out himself. So he'll cut out the stencil of the image that he wants, and then he'll take that stencil and he'll go to the streets. He'll find a place that he would like to put it, and he puts it on the wall or wherever it is, and then he uses spray paint to then apply the stencil to the wall or
So normally during a riot, we would see people throwing rocks or maybe hitting someone in the head with shovels. But here we see this character throwing flowers. Why is that?
That's interesting that you ask that, and that is the main meaning behind this work of Banksy's. The person is seen throwing flowers because Banksy is trying to promote peaceful rebellion. In Banksy's book Wall and Peace, he talks about the corrupt and brutal regime of President Ceausescu of Romania. He talks about how President Ceausescu addressed a crowd in Bucharest, and then how one solitary man in the crowd, and he started shouting a phrase. Everybody else around him started chanting the phrase, and that was the start of the revolution in Romania. This one man who spoke out against the president in a crowded area started a revolution.